Video I'm going to discuss about pre-order traversals, and these are the steps for performing pre-order traversals. The very first step is visiting the root node. The second step is traversing the left subtree, and the final step is traversing the right subtree. So the very first step is it will visit the root node. After visiting the root node, it will visit the left node. After visiting the left node, the entire left subtree part, and then it will move on to the right subtree. Root, left and right. This is the order of pre-order traversal, and this is the example. For this example, we are just going to apply the pre-order traversal in this example, and we are going to visit each and every node now. Let's start now. So according to the steps given here, the very first step in the pre-order traversal is visiting the root node. So here, with the help of the pre-order traversal, we are going to visit each and every nodes in the given tree, in the given example tree. The very first step is visiting the root node. So here the root node in this tree in the given example is A. So it will first visit the node A. After visiting the node A, after visiting the root node, it is supposed to move on to the left subtree. So it will move towards its left. So the left subtree, the left node of A is B. When we check B again, this B is acting as the root node for the node D and E. According to the steps given here, we are supposed to visit the root node first. So since the B is acting as a root node here, B will be visited after A. After visiting B, again it has to move to the left node, left subtree. When we check the left node, that is D, again this D is acting as a root node for the node G and H. So the D is falling under the root node, so the D will be visited. After visiting the root node again, it is supposed to move on to the left subtree. When we check the left subtree of the node D, it is only G. When we check G, the G is not acting as the root node for any of the node. It is just acting as a left node for the node D. So since the D was acting as the root node for the node G and H, the D was visited. After visiting the root node D, the G node will be visited because the G node is acting as a left node for the node G. So after the root node, we are visiting the left node, that is G. After visiting the root as well as after visiting the left node, it is supposed to move on to the right subtree. So when it moves to the right subtree, in the right subtree, the very first node is H. When we check H again, H is acting as a root node for the node L. So the node H will be visited. After visiting the root node, it is supposed to move on to the left subtree, but there is no left node for the node H, so it will move to the right node. When we check the right node, there is only L. The L is not acting as a root node for any of the node. It is just acting as the right node for the node H. So after visiting the root node H, there is no left node. So directly it is moving on to the right node. The right node is L. So after visiting the node H, the node L will be visited. Now the left subtree of the root node B are visited. Now after visiting the root node B and the entire left subtree, it is supposed to move on to the right subtree. When we check the right subtree of the node B, there is only E. E is not acting as a root node for any of the node. It is just acting as the right node for the node B. Now the root node B is visited. Traversing the left subtree is completely over. After completing the left subtree, it is supposed to move on to the right subtree. When we check the right subtree, there is only one node E there. So the node E will be visited after N. Now A is the main root node. The entire left subtree of A are visited. All the nodes in left subtree are visited. Now it's time to move on to the right subtree. When we check the right subtree, the very first node in the right hand side of the root node A is C. When we check C, C is again acting as a root node for the node F. So the node C will be visited because according to the steps given here, the root node must be visited first. Since the node C is acting as a root node for the node F, the node C should be visited first. After visiting the root node, it is supposed to move on to the left subtree, but there is no left subtree for the node C. So it has to move on to the right subtree. So when we check the right subtree, the very first node of C in the right hand side is F. But the F is again acting as a root node for the node I and J. So the node F should be visited first. after visiting the root node F, it has to move on to the left subtree. When we check the left hand side, there is only one node I is there. I is not acting as a root node for any of the node. It is just acting as the left node for the node F. So after visiting the root node F, it is supposed to move on to the left subtree. In the left hand side, there is only one node I is there. So now after visiting the root node, it will be visiting the node I. After visiting the left node, it is supposed to move on to the right subtree. When we check the right subtree, the very first node is J. But when we check the node J, it is again acting as a root node for the node K. So before visiting K, it will be visiting J first, since it is acting as a root node for the node K. After visiting the root node, the J is acting as a root node for the node K. It is supposed to move on to the left subtree. In the left subtree, there is only one node K is there. So the K will be visited. It is acting as the left node for the root node J. So the node K will be visited. After visiting the left subtree, it is supposed to move on to the right subtree, but there is no right subtrees available for the node J. Now when we check, all the nodes are visited. There are no nodes left out here. So this is the solution. So this is the order of visiting the node when we follow the pre-order traversal algorithm. So this is the pseudocode for pre-order traversal. Here, when the tree is not equal to null, it means when the tree is not empty, it will start applying the pre-order traversal procedure. So when the root is not equal to null, the very first step is it will print the root. It will print the data which is there in the root. After visiting the root node, it is supposed to move on to the left subtree. Traversing the left subtree is the second procedure. After traversing the entire nodes in the left subtree, it will move on to the right subtree. So after visiting the entire nodes in the right subtree, the procedure will end. And this is the pseudocode. Thank you.